For women especially, there's a couple of different factors that play into the importance of taking care of your gut. And women are disproportionately affected by digestive issues. I think they're 2 times more likely to have IBS. They're 2 to 3 times more likely than men to suffer from constipation. And I think 75% of women complain about bloating and other digestive issues.
Well, welcome to Biohacking with Brittany, the podcast where science meets wisdom. I'm Brittany Ford, holistic nutritionist, biohacker, and mom. And for years, I struggled with gut issues, hormonal imbalances, and the exhaustion of motherhood while running a business. Biohacking and functional medicine became my way back to clarity, vitality, and trust in my body. And that's why I'm here, not just to share information, but to share the practices and perspectives that truly shifted my health and my life. Each week, I bring you science-backed tools, honest conversations, and rituals I live myself so you can return to your own body's wisdom and create longevity on your own terms. Because your body already knows this is just the space to remember. Hi, and welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining me. I'm so thrilled that you're listening today. We are doing another episode for my 12 holiday rituals, and today we are focusing on the gut. We are talking everything probiotics, and I have so much to say about this. I had a lot of gut health issues actually when I was a teenager. It's actually how I got involved in natural health and nutrition in the beginning, was through these gut health issues I had of like leaky gut, dysbiosis, and parasites and other things like that. And so when I got to do this interview with Omni-Biotic, I got to sit down with Hannah and Lena Kleinfeld, and it was really cool talking to them because they are sisters and they run this business that has just absolutely taken off. So they are the co-founders and they kind of like go hand in hand with how they work together. And it was really cool to actually peel back the layers and talk about how they run a business as sisters. But more than that, we really get into Omni-Biotic. They make science-guided, targeted probiotics that help you build a resilient gut microbiome and feel your best day and night. And what I love about Omni-Biotic compared to every other probiotic that I've taken is that they have very specific blends for the issues that you might be dealing with. So, for example, I think it's in my bathroom actually. I take their stress probiotic, which we talk about on this episode, of like how the gut and the brain connect to each other, how they talk to each other, and how certain probiotics can actually help support that navigation and that channel of communication. And so if you take certain probiotics, it can really help foster a healthier stress response. So that's what I take at night. We talk about that. They also have probiotics for like everything. A lot for gut health. They have one for travel, which I'm going to look into as I go and travel very shortly for 4 months with my family. And so this is something that I'm thinking a lot about, of like, what type of microbes do I want to add to my gut microbiome currently so that it's as healthy and resilient, strong, diverse for when I'm traveling. They have probiotics for children, for babies, and we talk a lot about that. And also their formulation is very interesting. So it's a packet and it's a powder and you add it to water versus like a capsule. And we talk about this again on the show, that I have something on my lip. I talk about it on the show. A lot of the times with these capsules, they actually don't get digested and they are ruined and destroyed by the time they even make it to the large intestine. So we talk about this, and I think you're going to get a lot out of it. If you haven't entered my giveaway yet, please do so. You can win up to $5,500 US worth of wellness goodies and gifts. This is the total amount. Through the link, you're actually able to enter once for all 12 prizes. And for Omnibiotic for today, they are giving away 3 boxes of their stress resilience probiotic worth over $200 US. And so I think this is just such a nice prize. It's especially for the new year, or even if you get it, well, I guess you get it in January. Like, it's such a nice way to kick off the new year, is like really supporting your gut health for 3 months, which is quite a long time. And it's actually the perfect amount to see a difference. Really, it is. It is to see a difference in your gut health. So check out Omnibiotic. Check out my giveaway. You are welcome to enter. Everyone, to open globally. It's linked in my bio. It's linked in the show notes on my website everywhere so you can find it easily. Please follow Omni-Biotic and support them as well. I also just love having women on the show who are running successful companies in the biohacking and longevity space. So it was great to talk to them. Enjoy this podcast episode, and I will catch you soon for another one. Hello, and welcome to the show, Hannah and Lena. I am so excited that you're joining. And before we hopped on, we were talking about the fact that you are sisters and you run a business together. How is that going?
That's a great question. We get this asked a lot. And, maybe just to back up a little to kind of give a little backstory of how this happened in the first place. So I first got into this health and wellness space and, gut health in particular through my own journey with Lyme disease in my early 20s. And through my own healing journey, I got to know Omni-Biotic, which was at that point a really growing and thriving brand in Europe. I got to know them through a doctor there when I was kind of at my wit's end for what else to do in my recovery journey. And as you know, the gut is at the core of so much. And so that's how I got to know Omni-Biotic. And then when I was at business school, I kept coming back to this question of what do I want to do next with my life? And I kept coming back to this question of, why is Omni-Biotic, which is a completely different approach to probiotic and gut microbiome medicine, why is this brand not in the US? And through a really interesting turn of events, I got to know the founder in Europe. And, that's really how it started, this idea to bring Omnibiotic here to the US. Right around the time we were launching, my background is in business. And so right around the time we were launching, Lena at that time was working in LA at Lionsgate in communications. And I kept asking her all these questions of like, how would you do this and this? And we started talking, and then, Lena, do you want to kind of pick up from here and tell your side of the story?
Yeah, I was looking at the time to switch over to wellness because that's more where my passion was growing. And Hannah started giving me more of these casual calls, and then they turned a little bit more professional and formal. And I ended up, giving my pitch in terms of the launch plan to her and the Europe team. And they formally asked me to come on as co-founder in the US and then head of marketing. And we haven't looked back. And I think, it's wonderful because on the sister front of it, you have so much trust and like an understanding of shared values that I think that creates a lot of like stability in the business. But of course, you have little arguments here and there that you have to resolve, just I think as you do in every team. And I think we also had to learn how to like separate the personal from more the business side of things. But I think ultimately it's been a wonderful experience so far because you have this deep trust and understanding.
Yes, I actually love that you guys are sisters. And we were also talking about before we hopped on, I was just at a retreat with a bunch of women who all actually, not all, but some of them work with their husbands in their business. And they've grown these businesses where they've been able to bring on their husbands to be like COO and like really kind of take over that like masculine part of like business, and they're more the visionaries. And they kind of said what you said is like there's this element of shared values and trust that you just can't really get there necessarily with most strangers or most people that you don't know.
Yeah, and I think, in Europe, Hannah can get more into the founding story of Omnibiotic in Europe, but it's a family business there as well. And the products were actually developed from a personal story. As I said, Hannah can get into detail of that. And I think it just made sense to continue that kind of theme here in the US. And I do think that helps us stand out because there's an emotional aspect of like our mission, and we want to help people heal and feel and function their best. And we're very mindful of who we partner with. We're not venture capital back like other companies. So there's a true passion and mission that's driven by like a personal conviction and personal purpose behind the business.
Yeah. Yeah. I also just love that you are like woman co-founded here in the US in the biohacking and longevity space, because it's honestly just not common. And I try to bring on the brands like yours that are women-led because most of my audience is women. So there's like a point of relatability there. But I also just Yeah, I think there's something different about how women run businesses. And there tends to be this deeper sense of care. And especially if your audience that buys your products is women, which I'm assuming, I'm actually curious what your breakdown is, if you know male versus female. I just think the way that women run business is more intuitive and something that we can even talk more about if you're interested.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's so interesting. We definitely have a heavily weighted female audience. So, I would say it's probably about 70% women. But what we also know is that a lot of these women buy for their families. So, and I mean, it's the same with Lena and me. If we don't put the Omnibiotic out for our husbands, they're just going to forget about it. But then they complain the next day that they don't feel that good. So a lot of the women in the households, I think, are the ones who are buying the supplements for the family, including their children. So that's definitely what we see as well.
Yeah. And I mean, this is also something we'd love to talk to you about today. Gut health is obviously important for everyone, right? It helps lay the foundation for your overall health and longevity. But for women especially, there's a couple of different factors that play into the importance of taking care of your gut. And women, I mean, there's a few stats that we like to pull up. It's women are disproportionately affected by digestive issues. I think they're 2 times more likely to have IBS. They're 2 to 3 times more likely than men to suffer from constipation. And I think 75% of women complain about bloating and other digestive issues. So, there's modern factors that play into that. Obviously, stress and having really high expectations of the modern woman, as I'm sure you know. There's also overuse of antibiotics and prescription medications, but then also just the Western lifestyle, right? Processed foods and alcohol and all these factors deplete the gut and on a daily basis sometimes. And we have to replenish and maintain good gut health in order to live well and long.
Yeah, that's actually so interesting because women are way more interested in health and wellness than men, right? And even self-care. And there's like multiple reasons that's the case. But it's interesting that even though that might be true, women are still facing digestive issues more than men. So how does that make sense? If we are actually taking care of ourselves better than men, but yet we have more issues than men? So like why is there a disconnect there in terms of gut health? Like, what would you think?
I think this is a really multifaceted kind of answer. And I know I've been listening to your podcast, of course, too. And I know you talk about this too. It's really not one thing, it's multiple things that kind of make up our well-being. I think there is, one portion is just women have a monthly cycle, at least in our reproductive years, and that our fluctuations in hormones can contribute to things like bloating, constipation, and changes in digestion. But then I think it's also some of it is just, as Lena said, kind of the expectations placed on the modern woman of, working and caring for the kids and doing it all. And that really raises our overall stress level and sends us into this kind of fight or flight, which then again also kind of has, systemic effects through the body. And last, which I think you were also just kind of hinting at, I think there is something, if you look at it more energetically and maybe even spiritually, around the male versus like the masculine versus feminine energy, a lot of today's systems and workplaces are still more set up towards a masculine energy and like how men like to function. And so I think that altogether just puts women in a bit of a kind of like stress overdrive situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like in terms of the gut, and like I've had my fair share of gut health issues, and we can get into that, is like I went through a period of time where I would even just like clench my gut all the time, right? Like especially before I had my kid, I was always almost like sucking in my belly all of the time and like wanting to be smaller and feeling like smaller was better, which is like a result of like society conditioning. But I didn't understand how that might impact my digestion and my gut. If I'm constantly sucking in and I'm breathing from my chest, I'm not even breathing into my belly, I'm like a constant shallow breather. How am I actually allowing proper blood flow and oxygen to get to the gut with food in it or even without food in it? And I think that's just one example of like, it's great that we're into health and wellness, but the way, exactly like you said, like the way that society's set up, it's for men. And there's so much conditioning that's from men and for men and all these things. But it takes a complete toll on our gut and our digestion over time.
Yeah. And I think what, Lena and I talk about this all the time. The gut really is such a control center for your health. And it's not just our digestion that is impacted by a healthy gut. It impacts our immune system. It impacts our brain and our cognitive health, our mood, our detoxification pathways. It's really linked to so many different functions in the body. And we know that being in a constant chronic stress or burnout mode, that's chaos for your gut, because cortisol, our stress hormone, increases inflammation in the gut and can actually diminish our good gut bacteria. So in a way, this all, again, is kind of connected. If you're stressed and chronically stressed, that depletes your gut bacteria. It increases inflammation in the gut. It then increases inflammation and oxidative stress and all those things in your body. And we all know that chronic inflammation and low-grade inflammation throughout your body has been connected to so many of our modern day illnesses, including insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, etc. It's really all this vicious cycle that I think a lot of it is driven by kind of the modern stress factors, which doesn't just have to be stress. It's also what we eat or, medications we take, toxins we're exposed to. But all this kind of adds up over time, takes a toll on the gut, and then from there has ripple effects across the body.
Brittany, do you think it would be helpful for listeners to just quickly back up and also define what we mean by the gut and gut health? So I guess I'll get into it. So the gut microbiome, when we talk about it, we mean this world of trillions of microorganisms that live in our large intestine. And you can have good bacteria, bad bacteria, you can have yeast. And what you really want to see there is balance and diversity. When you have a balanced and diverse gut microbiome, that is usually associated with health and longevity. Whereas if your gut microbiome is depleted and there's a dysbiosis, an imbalance, so either too little beneficial bacteria or actually an overgrowth of bad bacteria, that contributes to all kinds of acute and also chronic illnesses and premature aging. So we always kind of like to throw that in there because often, to me, before Hannah got into this world of gut health and started repairing her gut, the gut wasn't even something I really thought about, right? And I think it's so cool that when you are aware of how powerful the gut microbiome is in living well and long, you can really start to also be aware of what depletes it and how you can replenish it with supplements like Omni-Biotic, but also certain, simple lifestyle tactics help.
Yeah, the way that I like to describe the gut microbiome is I always picture the Amazon rainforest because it's so diverse. There's so many different birds and insects and things we can't even see, plants, trees, everything. And the beauty and the strength comes from the diversity. It's not from the number, with the probiotics, it's not you have lactobacillus in this billions of range. Oh, you have a healthy gut. No, that's not how it works because we don't want too much of that good bacteria. And so it's just describing it to people as you want all of these. It's okay to have bad bacteria. We're all going to have bad bacteria. It's just keeping the numbers within a certain range is super important. And I do want to actually get into your product specifically because at the top of this show, you said something along the lines of your probiotic is designed differently than everything else on the market. And I would love for you to explain that to everybody listening of why is it designed differently and how does that work?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. And then Lena, I'm sure you have stuff to add. But so at Omnibiotic, we don't take a one-size-fits-all approach. We know that different bacterial strains do different things in the body. And therefore, the formulations we have are formulated with specific end goals in mind. So yes, of course, they all promote better digestion. But on top of that, they address additional health benefits or health goals. So we have one formulation, Omnibiotic Stress Release, that's really targeting the gut-brain axis. And we have clinical studies using these final formulations showing impact in real humans, which is very rare actually in the dietary supplement world. And we have another formula on the gut-liver axis and really supporting metabolic health and detoxification pathways, which is our Omnibiotic Detox. And then we have other formulations for immune function, antibiotic restoration, and we actually just introduced a new kids line of products too for our little ones because gut health matters there so much too. And the other thing that really sets us apart, in addition to the clinical studies, is we have a very powerful delivery mechanism. So you've seen our products, Brittany, they come in little sachets, they're a powder. And when we tested this powder against 10 of the leading US brands, many of which come in capsules, we actually saw that the average survival of these probiotic bacteria into the intestines is 7% across these 10 brands, whereas for us, it's 80. So we're actually making sure that the probiotics you take make it into your intestines alive and metabolically active so that you basically have really strong gut bacteria that you're getting, that they can actually do their job versus being very weak and eventually just dying and being passed out of your body.
Well, go ahead, Lena.
No, I was going to say Hannah did a marvelous job at explaining that. The one tiny point I'll add is I know a lot of folks have started taking spore-based probiotics, and I think there's a time and place for that. However, what also I think helps Omnibiotic be so effective is the fact that they're human strain probiotics. They're natural to the human body. They can colonize in the gut and reproduce, so you will have a much longer lasting effect than a spore-based probiotic, which is foreign to the human body and will have transient benefits, but ultimately be excreted again. Forgot to hold my mic.
What do you think about the probiotics that come in a capsule that is made with prebiotic fiber around it?
Yeah, I mean, the concept of adding some prebiotics to your probiotics is not new in a sense. We also add some small amounts of prebiotics to our powder. For us, when you activate, let's just say it this way. When you mix the powder in water prior to intake, the probiotic bacteria, which are freeze-dried, they rehydrate, they reactivate, and they find these prebiotic nutrients, which is their favorite foods, and they begin to metabolize and kind of eat these prebiotics, which makes them even stronger for their passage through the intestine. Adding a little bit of prebiotic to a probiotic makes it a symbiotic. That's kind of the formal term for it. But I think what people need to be aware of and careful with is those are usually very small amounts of prebiotics, which is very different to taking like a fiber supplement that you might want to take if you notice that you're low on fiber. It's really not the same as if you know you're not getting enough fiber in your diet, and over 90% of Americans are not meeting their daily fiber goals, you really want to be looking at either getting that through your diet or by adding a specific fiber supplement or a prebiotic supplement versus just getting it from those small amounts.
Yeah, Brittany, generally speaking, when it comes to capsule probiotics, the issue is that probiotics are beneficial bacteria. So they're live organisms. So when they are made into a supplement, often they're freeze-dried. So a lot of the liquid is sucked out and they're basically like in a dormant state. So in order for you to activate them so they have benefit to your body, you need to activate them into a liquid. So for us, we do that outside of the body with some water or a neutral liquid. For capsules, the probiotics will encounter the liquid in your stomach, which is your stomach acid. And that is very acidic, and the probiotics don't like that. So a lot of the good bacteria will actually become weakened or even get killed before they reach your large intestine. So, I know some brands claim that they've kind of outsmarted that process, but you can kind of, knowing the explanation behind why you want to avoid a capsule, you can kind of deduct for yourself as to how effective a capsule probiotic can be.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I've taken so many different probiotics and tried so many different ones. What I like about yours and kind of what you alluded to is I like that you can target different issues or concerns. It's not something I see very often. And I actually want to ask about that because I have your stress release right in front of me. And you have your probiotic blend in here, which has quite a lot in it, actually, like a bunch of different lactobacillus strains. Oh, and you have bifidobacterium. That's interesting. So just to help me understand and everyone listening understand, how exactly does that work if you're saying that these specific bacteria help with stress? Because for the average person listening to it, they're thinking, okay, I'm taking this bacteria and it's going in my gut, and then it's helping populate this rainforest. But stress happens in my mind. So how does, do you know what I mean? Can you help us connect the dots?
So stress is incredibly depleting to the gut. So it kills your good gut bacteria and contributes to inflammation and dysbiosis in your gut. Hannah touched on this earlier, but when the gut becomes inflamed, the gut lining actually becomes permeable or leaky. So that's what we know as leaky gut. So now anything that you're taking into your mouth and is in your gut can not properly actually be weeded out for what should be absorbed and what maybe shouldn't be absorbed. So you start having toxins and pathogens leak into your bloodstream and you start creating an overreaction of the immune system.
And that contributes to more and more inflammation throughout your body. So that's how stress really depletes the gut and increases this inflammation. Inflammation shows up in all kinds of different forms in your body. For some people, it's skin issues. For others, it's migraines, brain fog, neuroinflammation. For others, it's, stubborn weight gain, tiredness. So that's really kind of this vicious cycle of being stressed, the gut feeling depleted, and then adding more and more stress throughout your body. Also, keep in mind you have the gut-brain connection. So the gut and the brain are constantly talking to each other bidirectionally. So when your good gut bacteria are off balance, you're kind of messing with this communication, and that can contribute to mood imbalances or truly just feeling anxiety, or, it also contributes to larger mental health issues. Does that explain kind of this? Yes. Okay, good.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a really helpful explanation. And I dealt with leaky gut years ago. It was actually one of the first real breakthroughs I had with my health in terms of healing and getting better. Is once we found out that was the issue. And I mean, we all have holes in our gut lining, but it's how big they are and how many of them are there is really important. And I actually just recently had my gut tested. I don't know if you know the company Tiny Health. Yeah, they're incredible. My favorite, I recommend them to all my clients. They've been on the podcast. Amazing company. Yeah, amazing company. A woman-led, again, mother of, I think she has 4 kids now. Anyway, she's incredible. And yeah, so I had my gut tested again and my score came back. I think it was 80, and last time it was 82, so it actually dropped. And I have a overgrowth of staph bacteria. And it was so interesting. So I'm on this herbal supplement now to help with it. And you can do something like oregano oil for, 7 days. But the thing is with oregano oil, which you guys know, is it's not specific. So it will kill all good bacteria and bad bacteria. And it's almost like a natural antibiotic. And I think that's so interesting because people will take oregano all the time to be aware of sickness and be careful, but you're actually also depleting the good bacteria. So my point in saying this is there's so much power to get tested. And once you have data and results, you can actually make very conscious decisions to help the gut bacteria without just throwing a antibiotic or oregano oil at it and causing more issues.
Absolutely. I love a good gut test. And honestly, I mean, Lena and I work in the gut health space, but we regularly do a gut health test just to check in on how our own gut health is doing. And I completely agree with you. It's sometimes important and almost necessary to take an herbal antimicrobial or a real antibiotic. It's just then knowing what are kind of the implications, in this case, on your gut, and how can you then repair and replenish so that you're not running into a lot of more issues down the line. Because if you just eradicate all your good gut bacteria, you don't have to be surprised if then in a few months your immune system starts getting weaker or you start experiencing these brain fog things or other issues. So yeah, that's a really important point. If you have to do that, which sometimes you do, then just keep in mind kind of what you have to do after to replenish.
Yeah, we actually have a probiotic that was designed for this specific restoration. It's called Omni-Biotic AB10, and it has these 10 specific beneficial bacteria that are wiped out through antibiotics or antimicrobials. And in Europe, I mean, most doctors won't even prescribe an antibiotic without mentioning a probiotic, and AB10 specifically. And that's wonderful. Hannah and I take that sometimes even after, we travel to a foreign country and you might have picked up some pathogens there, or we're eating out and you don't feel as good and you take it a few days after. It's really an amazing restorative probiotic.
Yeah, I should get that. Actually, I'm about to travel for 4 months.
Are you taking biocidin? Is that the herbal antimicrobial?
No, it is actually, it's a plant in South Africa, Pellegrinum. It's got this botanical name, but I think it's related to geranium. Does that make sense? I'll show it to you. And this was the Tiny Health recommendation. This is what they told me to take.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but Hannah had her persistent Lyme in her early 20s. I actually contracted persistent Lyme a little bit after that. We both, we spend a lot of time on Nantucket, which is a tick haven. So it's not genetic. It's just, kind of lifestyle factors that play into it. But I did a lot of my healing from that with herbal antimicrobials. So I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, what's actually so interesting is the symptom of it was showing up in my skin. for a few years. Because I remember a couple years ago, I got married and it was right around my wedding. But I thought it was eczema. I thought I somehow started getting like adult eczema, even though I didn't have it as a kid, whatever. And then I got my gut health tested. Turns out I had the staph overgrowth. And one of the things that this staph bacteria does is it releases a certain type of toxin. I think it's like endotoxin A, which can sit in your skin and cause skin rashes that can present like eczema.
Yeah, this is such an interesting topic. And, many people, I mean, especially in the, functional and longevity world, they call our skin the external mirror of the gut. Because if you think about it, our skin just essentially turns into mucous membrane on the inside, and then it's in our mouth and our digestive tract. So oftentimes when the gut is off, that presents as inflammation on your skin. And whether that's, for some, it might show up as eczema or acne or frequent breakouts, but it's not uncommon that when you then address the gut and with that lower inflammation or pathogens throughout your body, that your skin then also just looks really nice after.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other recommendation they gave me is like topically is to use Manuka honey, because Manuka honey, I guess, well, honey is just like so potent in general. And there was a certain UMF, I forget what that stands for, something factor. Anyway.
Well, it's antimicrobial. Honey is antimicrobial.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so I got this one that's like tallow mixed with Manuka honey, and I put it on the issue on like the spots and my elbows and stuff. And it was so much better within like 48 hours.
Amazing.
It was crazy. Yeah.
I love that people are becoming more aware of these alternative and natural resources as well. I love that. I mean, Hannah and I grew up like that, mainly because of our mother being super into like alternative forms of medicine. I think maybe in Europe, people are more open to it, but I think there's definitely a wave here in the US now. And that goes along with taking care of your gut too, because people are starting to realize how important it is, how much it impacts in your whole body.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was actually talking to a friend of mine recently, and she was having skin issues similarly to me. And she was like fed up. She's like, I'm done. And she's like, I'm just going to go on antibiotics. And she's telling me this after she's done it. She went on antibiotics for 31 days was the round that they gave her. And I'm like sitting there, I'm just like cringing because I want to say to her, like, antibiotics, from what I was told, is like it can take up to 5 years for your gut to repopulate to what it was before a round of antibiotics. 5 years. Is that what you guys find and hear in the research that you do?
Yeah, there's more and more research that's showing that even a very short course of antibiotics, 3 to 5 days, can drastically alter your gut microbiome in terms of diversity and just sheer number of good bacteria. And it takes quite a long time. I think the 5 years is, it's a range, and people kind of have different statistics that are floating around. But yeah, it's definitely very depleting and diminishing to the gut. And, I think with your friend, especially, first of all, it just always makes me sad, especially if someone is on an antibiotic for a whole month, that no one talks to them about, replenishing the gut. And then also, if you're not replenishing, it's not uncommon that then people 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks later run into other issues. Suddenly they have a UTI, or they're getting sick more often, or they're getting more frequent stomach bugs, or something that kind of points to that gut microbiome still being out of balance.
Yeah, it's amazing that you guys have a probiotic that is designed for taking antibiotics. I think that's really smart.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe how many, especially in the early days of Omnibiotic, Hannah and I would be more involved in customer service still. We would get so saddened by some of the stories we hear of just so much overuse of antibiotics without any replenishment after. And then that's really a ripple effect into secondary infections and other health issues. And we actually ended up developing what we now call the Gut Health Reset Program. So that's a 3-month protocol. It starts with that product I mentioned, Omnibiotic AB10. Then it goes on to Omnibiotic Stress Release, which is the one you're taking to really replenish the good gut bacteria, to increase the gut barrier integrity and reduce inflammation. And then it goes on to Omnibiotic Balance, which we haven't talked about yet, which is more like a maintenance probiotic. It's great for bloating, and especially if anyone is feeling a little bit more constipated, but it also supports the gut house immune system. And that's a really great product or program to start with if you're starting out on your gut health journey, if you've kind of
neglected taking care of your gut for the last few years. And that program does really, really well. I mean, it's a powerful 3-month. You should tell your friend.
I should.
Yeah.
Honestly, I should. I'd love to talk about C-sections for a second. So I had a C-section. I found out my baby was breached like 2 weeks before, and this whole thing happened, and it was hard to go through, knowing what I know about health. I remember arguing with the doctor about if I should take antibiotics in the IV when I was in the hospital room. And I was very on the fence about it, and they did not like that. But they said to me that the risk of infection could mean that it could impact my ability to breastfeed. Because if there's an infection with the scar afterwards, then you have to take a whole list of drugs and then you can't breastfeed. And so I decided that, okay, I'm going to take this antibiotic during this surgery through an IV and hope it doesn't screw things up for me and my baby. Because I just, I don't know if you guys are moms, but you really have to weigh the risks when you're going through birth and like the decisions that you make. Anyway, so for those moms listening who have had a C-section, what impact does that have on the baby? And what impact does that have on the mom in terms of gut microbiome?
Yeah, I think so. Just for context, Lena and I are both moms. Lena has a 13-month-old and I have a 2.5-year-old. So we've both been through it and are still kind of in the thick of toddlerhood. But first of all, as you said, birth is such a unique and special experience. And as a mom or an about to be mom, it's also can be a very stressful event where you're weighing your own health and your future, your baby's health and the birth risks and the doctors, what they're saying. So I think first and foremost, I would say to moms, whatever happened, be gentle on yourself and kind of get at it with grace. There's no point in feeling guilty or like you did something, even with maybe new knowledge you have now, there's no point in kind of feeling guilty about it or beating yourself up about it. If I were in a situation where I had to take antibiotics, whether it was during pregnancy or during the birth process, I would just make sure to really replenish my own gut bacteria after, with good probiotics, as well as eating fiber and just making sure I'm eating really nutritious, nutrient-dense food so that my gut can replenish and recover. I think a good idea would be to also test your gut microbiome maybe 3 to 6 months after that to just see in what shape it's in. If you're able to breastfeed, that's such a powerful way to strengthen your baby's immune system and your baby's gut microbiome. And then there are also probiotics made for babies. We actually have one specific for babies. It's called Omni-Biotic Panda. It has some of these really crucial early childhood probiotic strains in it that really help lay the foundation for a healthy gut. And then, once the children are a little bit older, you're also thinking, how can you support them through nutrition, through, just strengthening their gut in other ways? I think that would kind of be my words on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think our belief at Omnibiotic is not to completely avoid antibiotics. Antibiotics are life-saving drugs. They're necessary, and we're lucky to live in a day and age where they are available. It's just being aware of, as Hannah said, the repercussions to your gut and really nourishing and replenishing your gut health even more than you do on a daily basis during this treatment and after, I think is what's really important.
Yeah, and just while we're on this topic of pregnancy and birth and babies, there's actually also some science that's coming out around how our gut microbiome changes during pregnancy.
Wow.
Yeah, and actually needs to kind of rebalance afterwards anyways. And we also know that having a newborn is an extremely stressful time where we're not sleeping. We might not be eating the best ourselves. We're just learning how to be parents. And that in itself, the stress can also, again, kind of deplete your gut or just increase some inflammation. So I think either way, whether you had to take antibiotics or went through a C-section, it's always good kind of once you come out of this newborn bubble to really take a bigger picture assessment of your health, not just your gut, but really, maybe run some lab work with a functional practitioner to just really figure out where you're at and what are the systems that need replenishment. Because Brittany, you've said it on a couple of your episodes too, you need to really replenish as a mom after all the things you've been through.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And actually, what they told me is they told me that a C-section is so quick because you cut through 7 different layers and you have to take the baby out and they have to close you back up so fast because the risk of infection is so serious. And they said it takes about 12 minutes. And they told me that by the time they put the IV in me with the antibiotics, it has to go through my blood. Then it has to go through my placenta, which is like a filtration, even detoxification, however you want to think about it. And they said that it's really not even going to affect my baby because by the time it's gone through all of that, the baby is likely already, my son is likely already going to be out of me. I don't know how true that is. I've spoken to different people about that, but that's what I was told.
I mean, I think logically it makes sense because even for drugs that we take orally, it takes time for it to enter our bloodstream and, go and take effect. We see this. I sometimes, if I have a really bad headache and I have to take a painkiller, then it's like it takes 20 minutes or so to kick in. So I wouldn't be surprised if the same applies to something like the placenta, where it just takes time to travel to the baby.
What I think is so cool on this topic, and well, not even cool, but interesting, is that babies are actually born without a fully developed gut microbiome. So a lot of, mode of birth and breastfeeding and nutrition, and then also, exposure to medications like antibiotics in the first few years is very impactful in terms of helping them colonize their gut and also helping lay the foundation of like a robust immune system that's in balance, not overreacting, which can lead to like allergies and skin issues, but definitely reacting to invaders so that they're strong throughout cold and flu season, which is what we're in now. That's, we're so excited we have this Omnibiotic Panda probiotic, which is developed for mom during her 3rd trimester of pregnancy. And then, then she gives it to baby once the baby is born. It's called Omnibiotic Panda. And we recommend that for the first 3 years of life because that's really where like the core of the gut microbiome colonization is happening for a child. And we have studies that show that Panda actually reduces the risk of developing allergic conditions like eczema and asthma, which is really cool to like see that connection.
Yeah, I'm so curious. I actually should look at that product. I'm curious what the strains are. So I put my son on Evivo. I don't know if you know what Evivo is. And Evivo, I forget the name of the strain, but mostly I was concerned for this very reason of like he was a C-section. How can I support his gut? And I had his gut tested by Tiny Health while he was breastfeeding before starting solids and now solids. So interesting. I don't know if you guys have done any testing of your kids, but his gut is
I
in great
have. I
shape.
did Tiny Health.
Nice. Good. Yeah.
So what did you, I don't know how much you want to share, but like what were like the high level things you found with your son, like with breastfeeding and solids?
Yeah. So I'd have to look back at the breastfeeding one because it was like 5 months. But the most recent one, his score was 94%. And it wasn't higher because he has a lot of, what was it? I forget the name of it, but it was it a virus or a bacteria that indicated that he was eating quite a lot of plant fiber. And then in Tiny Health, the recommendations, they didn't even have any recommendations because it wasn't really a problem. And he just eats a lot of fruit, which has a lot of fiber in it. So,
94% seems like a really, really strong gut. So I think you're in a really good place there, which is awesome that you're thinking of that and making sure you're nourishing your son's gut health.
Yeah, well, he's presenting with eczema, and so that's like why I got him tested again. And it said in the chart of like if he has eczema and these are his results, it's likely environmental or genetic versus it being the gut. And I have a pretty clean home, I think. So now I don't know. So I'm going down the next rabbit hole. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, how old is your son?
He's 16 months.
Okay, we're happy to send you Omnibiotic Panda. You can see if that over time makes a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, I would love that. And so we're about to go traveling for 4 months. And that's what I do want to ask you next is, I probably should think about it. What probiotics I should be bringing with, because I'm going fully tropical. Like, I don't know what you know, but we're doing Panama, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and then Mexico. And so these people listening as well, if they're going to Mexico for a week, how do we protect our guts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, at least, my travel essentials are usually Omnibiotic Stress Release because that's one of my favorite products, and then Omnibiotic AB10 for kind of that, pathogen protection in a way. And sometimes, especially, when I go to places where I know food and water quality can be a little bit hit or miss, I often take AB10 in the morning and stress relief at night, or vice versa. And then, yeah, for your son, definitely also a probiotic. But then you know this too, just practicing the general kind of safety guidelines in the country that you're going to, in terms of like drinking water and you're watching your fruits and vegetables and stuff. Because, the fact is that, yes, a strong gut can help protect, but it doesn't make you invincible. Just like taking your vitamin C doesn't make you invincible to getting a cold or a flu. It just helps strengthen your immune system overall. So, just practicing those general safety guidelines. And then I would also say, depending on how you and your family feel when you get back, maybe another round of gut testing just to make sure that there is no pathogen that's lingering.
Right. And then so for my son, is he fine just taking the Panda, or would you suggest the AB one for him while we travel?
So since he's still so young, I would just say stick to the Panda. And then, yeah, that's probably my advice.
Okay. And then for those listening who are traveling, who are thinking of these things, if they're traveling and they get food poisoning, which has happened to me and it sucks, like you're in your hotel throwing up, what do you do in that time? Because you can't even really keep anything down. So how do you replenish, or how do you kind of or can you even, through probiotics, reduce the symptoms of food poisoning?
Yeah, some people have sworn by taking just a very small amount of Omnibiotic AB10 powder in like 1 teaspoon of water and kind of taking that, every, 20, 30 minutes for, until they've worked themselves through that one sachet during that acute phase of a stomach bug. My personal route is usually to wait until the acute symptoms are over, the throwing up is over, and I can keep liquids down, and then just taking half a sachet or a sachet in little water. Many people think you have to take it in a whole glass of water. I usually take mine more in 1 or 2 ounces of water, so that I find at some point you can keep down. And then it will help, especially if you're still dealing with diarrhea. It will really help kind of bring that in and support your bowel movements. Yeah. And then, again, kind of restoring the gut to make sure it goes back to its healthy self as quickly as possible.
Yeah. One thing I'll add here is from personal experience. I was once in Mexico and contracted something. And, once it passes, of course, I took Omnibiotic AB10. But what I also found was that I was starting to crave really sugary foods as I was starting to eat again. And luckily, I was on vacation with Hannah, and she warned me to not give in to those cravings, because this is truly your bad bacteria communicating to your brain, I want these sugary foods because they help me thrive, and I want to keep populating your gut and, reproducing. So I did not give in to the sugary cravings. I took my AB10 and I tried to eat, as clean as possible when you were recovering. And that really helped me get back on track.
I love that. Yeah.
That's another sign if someone is experiencing persistent digestive issues and possibly craving really sugary things all the time. Definitely, we recommend getting your gut checked and doing a GI map, and then working with a really gut literate practitioner to address what's going on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm running a women's biohacking and longevity retreat in Costa Rica in March. And I'm actually going to get your AB product and give it to my guests as part of like their welcome bags, because it is something I've been thinking of like these women traveling to meet me, I don't want anyone getting sick. And like we have such a short amount of time to work together and do all these incredible things that I have planned. So I think something like that is really smart. And so you're saying like morning and night.
Yeah, or at the very least, take the AB10 once a day. That's my baseline especially if generally when traveling, but especially when in countries where, the risk of foodborne illnesses are higher, definitely just the AB10. I like to take it at night because I feel like you're not eating for, 8, 9, 10, 12 hours. And so that's really when your gut has the most time to absorb and process and, these good bacteria. But yeah, if they can't do it at night, then in the morning on an empty stomach, whatever they have to do to, support their gut on a daily basis.
I love that idea, Brittany. I feel like that's going to be so great for them. It's just such a foundational supplement you can take.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how like things align, I'm looking for a supplement for travel for the gut, and here we are. If anyone listening wants to connect with you and try your products, follow you on Instagram, do all the things, where can they go?
Lena?
Should you want me to weigh in? Okay, so you can learn more about our products and shop on omnibioticlife.com. We're also available on Amazon for your convenience. And then on Instagram and TikTok, you can find us at Omnibiotic Life. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, Hannah and I just started our own kind of related podcast called the Wellness Digest Pod. So if you want even more gut health info, tune in there.
Cute. Amazing. Okay. I will link that in the show notes and put that down below so everyone can find you easily. Thank you for coming on the podcast. We are going to hop into my private community right now, and you guys are going to answer some questions.
Amazing. Let's do it.
Thank you for listening to Biohacking with Brittany. I hope today's conversation gave you something to take into your own life, a practice, a perspective, or simply a reminder to trust your body. If you love this episode, please leave a review, share it with someone else who could benefit, and join me over on Instagram at BioHackingBrittany for more. And if you're ready to go deeper, you can explore my retreats, community, favorite tools, all linked for you in the show notes. Until next time, remember, your body already knows.